am beyond honored to be here today. I thank you for sharing this moment with me, and I thank you for all that you do. I want to start by sharing an excerpt from my book, Don't Look at the Monster. I stood next to Anthony, same height and age, our smart hands grasping the cloth edges of the casket. We were 5 years old. Would you like to see your daddy? The man's voice was kind as he lifted us up at the same time and tilted us into the casket. I cried. I knew someone stood closely behind. 2-year-old Angie clinging to her black dress, Roy Jr. and Eileen by her side. I don't remember him much, just the way he from his pores. He laughed so robustly and raw. I knew he adored his family. Then why? I often heard my small mind wondering, why was Mom always crying? Why the ugly scars on her face, the knife wound on her leg? Why his voice, like music to my small ears, was sometimes so bitter? It was March 1973, the day so many conflicting emotions floated through my delicate young heart. But I knew one thing for sure. Daddy wasn't coming home no more. And Mom, now faced with raising 5 kids on her own, would never, ever have to cry that way again. You know, Arthur Ambrose once said, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. Who knew that more than 35 years later, that little girl, 5 years old, would have to confront her something else and find her courage, a courage that will ultimately change her life. I remember it so vividly. It was August 25th, 2007. The phone rang. I heard my daughter's voice on the other end, and I froze. I hardly remember the drive from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. Just remember sitting there across from my daughter as I listened to her tell me how he'd beaten her and strangled her, and how as she was blacking out, she now heard their 6-month-old baby girl named Promise screaming, who lay on the bed beside her. I closed my eyes as my heart literally broke into a million little pieces. And I said, no, not again. Not Promise. You see, this was not the beginning. I had just published my first book, Color Me Butterfly. Had spent years writing about what happened to the 4 generations of women in my family. I had to relive my grandmother's story, my mother's story, my daughter's story, about how my grandfather viciously abused my grandmother and her 8 children, and how he once even forced their 3-year-old son to eat a dead rat. About the time my mother lay in a hospital bed with stitches from the top of her chest down to her navel, and now told to kiss her 5 babies goodbye because my father had beaten her so badly that he burst both her lungs. The day my boyfriend kicked me in my 8-month pregnant belly and spit on me. The first time my daughter was almost killed. And now, here was Promise, not Promise. That night, I hardly slept. I just kept thinking about all the things that I had done to help my daughter. The countless calls to the police, the restraining orders. I had to move her 3 different times to 3 different states. Now, all I could think about was that I needed somebody to help me. So the next morning, after I got my daughter and promised to safety, I would write a letter to the only person in the world that I thought could help me and my family. And that letter started with, "Dear Oprah." I told Oprah everything about the 4 generations of women in my family that had suffered and survived more than 60 plus years of domestic violence, about how this was the 2nd time my daughter's boyfriend had tried to kill her. I told Oprah about the fear that I lived in every day that no mother ever wants to live in, of that fatal phone call. And then I said something in so many words that would ultimately change the course of my life. I said, "Oprah, if you cannot help me save my daughter, please, Oprah, help me save Promise." But deep down inside, I knew it wasn't Oprah that needed to save Promise. I needed to do something. So what did I do? I took everything I owned and I launched Saving Promise, a national domestic violence prevention organization to raise awareness and to prevent little girls like Promise from ever having to lay on that bed screaming again. I was not only going to save my sweet little brown baby Promise, but every other little Promise, and their mommies and daddies too. But let me tell you, it was not easy. First of all, I knew nothing about building a nonprofit. Then no one wanted to give me funding. Soon, my entire team had quit on me. And then I would have used up all of my life savings, liquidated my required retirement, walked away from a 20-plus promising corporate career, borrowed money from friends and family, got audited by the IRS, filed bankruptcy, became a victim of identity theft, and had taken on considerable debt. And if that wasn't bad enough, my health would start to decline from all the stress, and eventually I would soon be diagnosed with life-threatening illnesses. I hit rock bottom. And yet I still knew I needed to save Promise. And so I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed. You know, I prayed so much that I think even Jesus tried to hide from me. And after much prayer, I began to imagine, what if the nearly 50 million men, women, and children, that's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 3 men, did not have to be a victim of intimate partner violence? What if young people did not have to experience intimate partner violence, 69% of women and 53% of men, before the age of 25? What if victims did not have to be put at greater risk of infectious and chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, HIV/AIDS, PTSD, and mental health issues? I remember when I first saw this slide, it was at a summit that I hosted in 2015. And Dr. Jim Mercy from the CDC was there, and he opened up this summit, and he put this big, dark slide on the screen. And it was a slide of a world vision. And he said, what if there was a world where there was a disease that cause HIV/AIDS, heart disease, cancer, stroke, HIV/AIDS, and PTSD, and mental health issues, and he kept repeating them. And he said, there is such a disease. It's called intimate partner violence. It was the first time that I had ever looked at this issue, intimate partner violence, as a public health crisis. And what if we were able to reduce the $460 billion that intimate partner violence costs the U.S. economy alone? That is nearly 10 times the annual Justice Department budget. What if we were to work collaboratively to develop innovative breakthroughs that would prevent intimate partner violence at every level of prevention? I think we got it wrong when we think about prevention. We think we're talking about, let's just stop people from getting in it before it happened. That is one form of prevention. That's primary prevention. But then we can look at secondary prevention of intervening early detection, and then tertiary prevention of ensuring reoccurrence and it doesn't continue to happen again and again and again. That is comprehensive prevention. Imagine with me, folk, for a minute, if we put this into context. What if our children could get educated in public and private schools about the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships? What if employers had the resources to educate and engage their employees? What if healthcare providers could be trained on how to screen, how to intervene, and how to prevent intimate partner violence? Or our law enforcement had the proper training in order to know how to truly assess the difference between a victim and a perpetrator, and then how to take proper action. Those what ifs forced me to fall back on my roots and think differently. You know, I was at rock bottom, but rock bottom wasn't going to have me. I took a step back and I really thought about what it is I needed to be doing differently. And so first, I wrote a new strategic plan focused on prevention. I engaged a new board with visionary leaders from global corporations like Amazon and Starbucks and Janssen Johnson & Johnson. I collaborated with Janssen about that on that summit that I spoke about earlier that brought together experts and visionaries and leaders from every sector of the community. And I'm talking from public health, from academia, from corporate, from government, and NGOs. Because we needed to explore how could we collectively pool our resources, our time, our talent, and our treasures together to solve this global public health crisis. And then I went out and I built relationships with influential stakeholders at every level of the community. Then y'all know what I did next? I found the courage to approach one of the most influential, powerful institutions in the world, the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. What did I have to lose? I was already bankrupt. And nearly after a year of countless meetings, countless calls, and countless brain sessions. In fact, Jackie Campbell was part of those discussions. We pulled her in. We said, we need people like Jackie Campbell in these discussions. She also spoke at that summit that I just talked about, and I learned from her some of the things that will now take me a few more years to learn. And after those discussions, those countless meetings, those countless calls, Harvard said yes. Yes, yes, yes. Give it up, ladies and gentlemen. everybody and their daughter. Unless you have like a 1500 GPA. So Saving Promise and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health have partnered to launch one of the first of its kind, pioneering and innovative research and development labs focused squarely and only on intimate partner violence, with the lens around prevention. We want to commission research to better understand the root causes, the risk, the impact on our health, what's working, and also what's not working. We want to develop innovative prevention strategies to transform how the public health community addresses intimate partner violence. We want to convene leaders and visionaries at every sector of the community because it truly takes a village. We need public health, academia, government, corporate, and NGOs working collaboratively. And we also want to launch public education campaigns to educate our communities and empower every individual to take action. Ultimately, we want to disrupt the status quo and change cultural and social norms. You know, the fear I experienced when Promise lay on that bed screaming not only gave me a voice, but a vision. Because had Promise not screamed, I may have never had the courage to break my own silence. And had Promise not screamed, I may have never had the courage to think more boldly and differently and approach institutions like Harvard. And had Promise not screamed, I may have never had the courage to want to disrupt one of the most serious public health issues of our time. You know, this August 25th, Saving Promise will celebrate its 12th year anniversary, the very day. The very day that I had written that letter to Oprah. Today, Promise is 12 years old, well and thriving. She's a little girl who can walk into a room full of kids and leave with 10 friends. A little girl who absolutely hates to clean her room. And a little girl who calls me Bumblebee. I'm reminded of a story, a Promise, when she was just 5 years old. I would get her on the weekends, and one weekend she came. She was just learning how to spell her name and how to read. So she wandered into my office where she does not belong, and she found a brochure and she brought it to me. And she said, Bumblebee, and she pointed to a word on the brochure. And she said, this is my name, Promise. And I said, yes, that says Promise. So she looked at the other word in front of it and she said, so Bumblebee, what does that word say? And I said, that word says saving. So she said, saving? And I said, yes, saving. So she paused and she thought about it real hard and she said, so it says saving Promise? And I said, yes, it says saving Promise. So she burned her eyebrows and she said, but Bumblebee, what are you trying to save me from? I said, that's a long story. I'll tell you in about 7 more years. So though Oprah never responded to my letter, Oprah unknowingly did something even better. She gave me a gift. I'm going to tell her one day. You gave me a gift, the courage to find my own voice and to follow my own heart and dreams, to save promise. I want to share something that the great Indian teacher and father of yoga, Patanjali, once said, and I paraphrase. When you are inspired by some great purpose, your mind transcends limitations, your talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be greater a person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. It is those words that have carried me. And it is those words that every time I travel to another city to speak for the past 12 years, I try to honor and remember those individuals whose lives were lost to intimate partner violence. It's called Say Their Names. And I want you to join me in remembering local victims of San Diego as we learn about their stories, and we're going to say their names together. 19-year-old Willow Singer was shot to death by her ex-boyfriend in February 2019 in the doorway of her family's home before he turned the gun on himself. Their bodies were found by Willow's mother, who described Willow's ex-boyfriend as controlling. Not only was Willow a college student with a bright future ahead of her, but her dad had just died from cancer only 3 days before she was killed. Please join me in saying Willow Singer's name. Willow Siller.
Willow Singer.
Kara Bergman, 19 years old, from El Cajon, California, was murdered and her body was dumped near an Arizona highway outside of Phoenix in September. She had recently broken up with her boyfriend just a few weeks after they moved in together, and he is now on trial for her murder. Neighbors and witnesses told police that the couple had a history of domestic disputes, including fights and seeing bruises on Kara's body. Please join me in saying Kara Bergman's name.
Kara Bergman.
Sisters Anna Gabriela Soto, age 26, and Veronica Soto Ortega, age 30, were murdered in Escondido, California in August 2018. Anna was found in a burning SUV, and officers traced the license plate to the sisters' nearby home, where they found Veronica dead and her two daughters, ages 4 and 5, asleep nearby. Both women suffered traumatic injuries, and the suspect in both murders is Veronica's estranged husband, whom she was just in the process of divorcing. Please join me in saying Anna Gabriela Soto.
Anna Gabriela Soto.
Veronica Soto Ortega.
Veronica Soto Ortega.
For these young women represents the nearly 3 women that are killed every single day by an intimate partner. And these are just the ones that are reported.
Right.
Imagine how many there are that go unreported. You know, the one question that I am often asked when I travel around the country to speak is, How is it possible, even conceivable, that 5 generations of women in one family can be accosted by intimate partner violence? And I'm talking mother to daughter, mother to daughter, mother to daughter, mother to daughter. How is it possible? It's possible because of one word: silence. My grandmother didn't talk to my mother about it. My mother didn't talk to me about it. And I am not ashamed to stand here before you today and say, I did not talk to my daughter about it. Not until Promise screamed. It's possible for us all because of the silence in our homes, the silence in our families, the silence in our communities, the silence in our schools, the silence in our workplaces, the silence in our military, the silence in our faith-based institutions, and the silence in our laws. It's time we break the silence. It's time we stop working in silos. It's time we figure out how to come together collaboratively and collectively to pool our time, our talent, our resources, our treasures, to change this global public health crisis. You know, having come from 5 generations, I personally believe that I deserve the right, and I've earned the right, to challenge each one of us in this room today, all 700, to meet someone at this conference this week and figure out how you can work together. Because it truly takes a village. And because we owe it to Willow, we owe it to Kara, we owe it to Anna, we owe it to Veronica, and we owe it to Promise, the promise for us all. Thank you.